Hello, we are live. No, we're not live. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I'm very confused, but we sorted it out, and with a lot of technical difficulties, we're here, and it's time for another podcast episode. It's been like 2 years since the previous podcast episode, but welcome back to the channel, Angus McKay, two-time second place finisher in the subscriber league.
We're trying to make it three this year. I have a lock on the silver. No one can take that one from me. And yeah, I guess you just are so used to all those awesome streams you've been doing, starting with the and we are live. So you got that best ball mindset for sure.
It's muscle memory at this point. I gotta shift my focus, but I think I've just been so weary from the technical difficulties of setting this thing up that
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
Yeah, it's been a grind, but we think we figured it out. We are incorporating our phones and computers and headphones all just to get here. So yeah, we got it though.
And a critical OBS update to finally get it all set. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Angus's favorite players, some pushback from my singular voice on the channel. I feel like I can probably get a little bit too full of myself on occasion, and Angus is here to keep me in check. So we'll
Oh
have some
yeah.
some solid different takes for once, and yeah, we can start wherever you want. You gave me a list of players that you were
Mhm.
wanted to talk about, and is there anyone you wanted to start with?
Well, real quick, just some context for all of this. We do have our subscriber league draft coming up this Thursday. So I don't know about you. There is that feel like where I'm like, how much am I really going to share? Because you are directly speaking to who I consider my top opponent in this draft. And we also have another league we are in that is also an auction draft. So there's definitely that element of not wanting to tip your hand too much. There was a part of me that considered coming up with a fake player list just to throw you off the scent. Like how much gamesmanship do I want to incorporate here?
I had a feeling the names you sent me are not your full list. I'll leave it at that. I feel like
There
you're
are
gonna be
some,
honest. I
yeah.
don't think you want to look stupid on on the stream or whatever the fuck this is. But I imagine there's players you left out to keep some
There are some that I
privacy.
left out, and I will see if there are some that are definitely much higher than these individuals, but these are all individuals that I am incredibly high on. So the first one, if you want, we could start with is Malik Nabers, the new rookie wide receiver from the Giants.
Let's go for it. He's basically on my hate list. I'm not drafting Malik Nabers, whether it's any format, basically. Like everywhere I've checked, he's higher. I have Nabers, just for context on my stance before we get into yours. I have him at wide receiver 28 on ESPN. He's wide receiver 16. I hate that price. On Underdog, he's 17. A little more reasonable because it's best ball, but still way too high. And then on Yahoo, he's 23. Sleeper 22. I'm far lower all across the board. Go at it. Tell me what I'm
Sure.
wrong about Malik Nabers.
So, so especially in formats where catches count, so that would be half PPR and full PPR. I would be comfortable taking him honestly anywhere in the third. There are some players I like that are in the third. For example, Jaylen Waddle, I like him a little bit more. But with someone like Malik Nabers, he very easily could have over a 30% target share. And that's just coming from the fact that they really don't have any other weapons in New York. Not only that, apparently on draft day, there was a big debate amongst the Giants personnel. Half wanted Rome Odunze, the other half wanted Malik Nabers. Apparently, Brian Dable was someone who wanted Malik Nabers. So I do feel that he is going to have a personal interest in proving that that was the correct pick and that this was a right pick. Also, just from a talent perspective, all off season, so many experts were saying it's not Marvin Harrison here and Malik Nabers down here. It's that they're actually way closer and might even are arguably in the same tier. So from a talent perspective, I don't really think there are any questions with him. The season I think we can get from him is very much like a rookie Jaylen Waddle season, where there are just so many targets, so many quick design catches for him around the line of scrimmage, 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. And in PPR, that's kind of like a cheat code. You don't need these insane long deep shots to rack up points in PPR. And on top of that, he's so good after the catch. There are scenarios where he catches a quick little 5 yard slant and could take it to the house. Touchdowns for sure are going to be hard to come by, but again, in a PPR format, that might not matter at all. Half PPR, he's a bit more risky, but in full PPR, he might just get you there on catches because they're going to be very quick little design catches because they understand their quarterback limitations. Danny Dimes is not it. I don't think he's going to be the quarterback the entire year. But my big conclusion on Malik Nabers is I think he next year has a potential to be a round one wide receiver if we're looking ahead to how we think 2025 drafts go. I think it's 2025. Yeah, I think he could be a round one wide receiver.
All fair points. I would agree. In full PPR, I would bump him up. I would have him closer to wide receiver 20 for sure. And the talent is 100% there. I don't think he's that much different from Marvin Harrison either. I think they are in an equal footing. It's just a matter of landing spot for me. Like, I'm not worried about the volume. I've said on the channel I could see 150 targets for him as a rookie, which would be massive, but not out of the question at all given who else they have. It's really nobody. Like, it's him, Devon Singletary, and
Mhm.
then you're hoping that Wan'Dale Robinson steps up, but even that is not a guarantee at all. And Darius Slayton has been injured. There's no faith in him. Jalen Hyatt is
Mhm.
like just a gadget deep shot player. And there's no question he's getting a massive target share. That I do think is valuable. That's why I still have him as a top 30 receiver. But I just hate this offense, man. I just can't
Mhm.
get aboard the Daniel Jones train. And part of my like philosophy for drafting is like I also want to watch these players. Like if they're on my team, if
Oh,
I'm
sure.
starting them, I'm gonna be locked into the game and I'm gonna be like waiting to see it happen. And I know it's just gonna be so frustrating. Like even if he
Mhm.
does catch the like 6 catches, he'll have to get like 11 targets per game for that to happen. Like the catch percentage is going to be low. The deep shots are just not going to hit, I think. And I am so convinced that like they're going to settle for so many field goals when they finally get in the red zone. And that's just never going to happen on a consistent basis. Like I just don't trust Daniel
Mhm.
Jones. So that's really my ultimate like hesitation. If if he had gone to the Chargers, if he had gone to the Cardinals, if he had gone almost anywhere else, like even if he was drafted by like the Titans in in a pick 7, he didn't fall there obviously, but like he was one spot away. I would be much more confident in Neighbors, but I just hate the Daniel Jones situation, and that's the reason I'm out. But you have very
Mhm.
good points here. Like I could definitely look back a year from now and be like, yeah, I ranked him like 10 spots too low. He
Mhm.
has that talent. I could get burned, but
He's for sure an upside play, and that's the thing. He doesn't have to be your first. Like if you have an elite receiver, like all his faults, Jefferson this year is still an elite receiver. You could even then go receiver, receiver, and then Neighbors is your third receiver. At that point, it's an upside play. So you don't need him to carry you. Like if he's your first receiver because you went running back, I would say no, don't do that. There's too much risk in that. But if you want to go for that upside receiver shot, then I have no problem taking him.
okay. For you're on board with Malik Neighbors. I would prefer a guy like Tank Dell. Both just upside plays, but yeah, you made me more willing to consider it. I'll admit that.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm
If
a
you
little too
want,
low.
Tank Dell is a pretty good segue to another person we could talk about here, and that would be Stefon Diggs,
Yes, you
his fun
are
teammate.
you are more on the Diggs train than I am, but you've been a huge fan of Diggs. I feel like you've drafted him on every single team I've seen you take, with
Yeah.
the exception of last year's subscriber league because you got sniped. But it worked out.
Yes.
It was not a good investment last year.
It paid off last year. The Diggs thesis is pretty easy for me, and it makes me worried that I'm missing something almost. So if you look at Diggs's career, he has a long and proven career of being a top 10 wide receiver, and not just top 10 fantasy. I mean an NFL top 10 wide receiver at mostly earning volume. Like the man
Yeah.
commands a target share and he gets open. And as we know, like receiver is a skill-based position. Running back is not a skill-based position. It's an opportunity-based position. Receiver, like targets are earned, not given. So he at on several teams, Vikings, Bills, like has proven that target earning ability and in that upper crust of the NFL. The most recent example of him doing that was the first part of last year. He was still putting up amazing numbers last year. And then about halfway through the year, he stopped. And I think the biggest thing, like, I don't know if you remember this, but for most of the early part of it, like the Bills kept losing. I remember in all the sports talk shows, it was, are they even going to make the playoffs? Like they were having a very bad season because they kept having all these heartbreaking losses. And then that led to them firing their offensive coordinator and they have a coordinator change. Honestly, the thing that made me come around on Diggs the most is watching that show Receiver, mostly just because I got to see Devontae Adams struggle with Jimmy Garoppolo and how much that actually matters, where they're frustrated with their situation and that kind of affects their play. So my all that to say, I don't think Diggs is washed. A lot of people out there think, oh, no, suddenly middle of last year without an injury, without anything like that, he's just bad now. And I disagree. I think he is still that elite target earner. And especially when you then look at Nico Collins and Tank Dell, right, in Houston. Before CJ Stroud got there, they did not have good seasons. They had very poor rookie years. Well, excuse me, that's Nico Collins specifically because this was Tank Dell's rookie year. But he did not have a good rookie year. He didn't even have a great second year. I all that to say, I think CJ Stroud did way more for them than they did for CJ Stroud. And if we think that CJ Stroud has the potential to be an MVP candidate this year, then Diggs might not even be getting a quarterback downgrade from Josh Allen. It could even be that he is in a better system who is going to want to throw him the ball a lot more. And if he is a better target earner than Nico Collins, than Tank Dell, he might be the wide receiver one in this offense come the end of the season. Like he is still that elite level talent. Stroud is just that good. And yeah, I think he's kind of being slept on.
He has a path to work out, and I don't think he's like an egregious pick. I just prefer Tank Dell, who usually goes later. That's why I kind of just skip on him, but I do take him occasionally. I just what sells me so much on preferring Dell over Diggs is when I saw that clip from. Did you ever see the Micah Parsons podcast with CJ
Yeah,
Stroud?
where he picked Tank.
Yeah, and he's like, just give me your top 11 players, and we're gonna go one on one, my top 11 versus your top 11, and like accompanying Devontae Adams and I believe Jamar Chase. Maybe it was I think it was Jamar Chase as the third
Yep.
guy, but Tank Dell was his last pick, and there's
Mhm.
so many other players to choose from. Maybe it was Tyreek Hill. I just
No, it
spec-
was it was Chase and Devontae Adams. Yeah.
okay, so I was right, but
Mhm.
I just think they have such a good friendship, and he's just not going to ignore him. They paid Nico Collins, and Nico had a fantastic season last year
Mhm.
because Diggs is like just new to this offense. I know he's that veteran between the three. He's going to have some big games. Like they have a matchup against the Bills where I know for a fact he is going
Mhm.
off in that game. And
Mhm.
there will be some times where he does have the most targets, but I think most of the time he's going to be the third guy, but it's going to be like maybe Nico gets 10 targets, Tank Dell gets like 9, and then Diggs gets 8. So I'm kind of just
Mhm.
splitting hairs where I still have him in the same tier. I still have him as a top 30 guy. I bumped him up now to like 27. So I'm a little bit higher on
Mhm.
Diggs than I previously was. I think I was like maybe over estimating Nico's value. But I just think with some of his like headache behavior, he might wear on them a little bit. And it is just a 1 year rental at the end of the
Mhm.
day. That's where I'm like, as the season goes on, he's still super valuable. He's in a critical part of their offense, but he's just not my favorite of the three. And while he can still be really involved, it is arguably a better offense from like a passing volume standpoint. I think Stroud's going to throw it more than Allen did last year because Allen runs it a lot as well.
Mhm.
I just don't see enough volume there for him to surpass the stats that he gave you. Like to your point, here are his splits with Dorsey in those first 10 games. He was averaging 16 and a half points per game on 10.2 targets per game. But then in the last 7 games when they shifted to Joe Brady, he fell off a cliff with only 7.9 points per game with how many targets? 4.9 catches, 8.3 targets, excuse me, 8.3
Mhm.
targets, but only 1 touchdown. So I think he'll be somewhere in the middle of that. I think you're probably going to get like 12, 13 points. I just think you're going to get closer to 14 from Dell and like maybe 14.3, 14.5 from Nico. So I have to pick one
Well,
at the
yeah.
bottom. For me, it's Diggs. It sounds like for you, it's Tank, or is it Nico?
For me, it's Tank, but I am concerned that Nico's just a little too overvalued in round two. That's really kind of what it is that I think Diggs is still just being slept on quite a bit. To their point on the 1 year rental, I'm not the only one who thinks that Diggs isn't washed, but the Houston Texans think he isn't washed,
Right.
mostly because they gave up a second round pick to go and get him and then immediately restructured his contract to make it 1 year. So the Texans believe that 1 year of Stefon Diggs is worth a second round pick for this upcoming year. And if that says all I need to hear just from how the team views him, because that second round pick with a quarterback like CJ Stroud, that could have been a great receiver. That could have been a piece for their defense. But instead, they said, no, we are better served using that second round pick to go get Stefon Diggs for a year. And also, he with his headache issues and people talk about his locker room etiquette, the first year he's in a new place, he's always like he was pretty good. His first year in Minnesota, there weren't problems. His first year in Buffalo, there weren't problems. It was after the team kind of struggled for a while. My point being, I think Diggs is very aware this is his last opportunity to get a big contract after this year, just because he's getting up there in age. So I think he's going to be on his best behavior for this year and is going to do his best to just absolutely ball out as much as he can. I don't think he's washed. So I think really like this it could be like Mike Evans last year where he was really not being drafted all that high and then boom, he just absolutely blows up and is a top 15 receiver.
It's all fair. I agree with you. Like he is a very good value. I worry about Nico if it's not best ball. Where like, okay, I'm not as confident starting him every single week when I draft him in the second. I have to do that now. In best ball, it's a little bit more forgivable. But
Plus, didn't
yeah,
Nico hasn't Nico missed a fair amount of games each season?
no, that was the
And
other
on top of
thing.
that, Dell got hurt last year, and he's kind of tiny. So like you've got these two people who have injury risks for sure, and then immediately like here's my point on Stroud. He's someone I like as well, but Stroud made Noah Brown last year look elite when
There were
Nico and Dell were
like
out.
3 games, but yeah,
But
sometimes you were like, holy shit, Noah Brown is a must start, and
But
then
Noah
yeah,
Brown doesn't have a team right now. I think I saw he got cut from whatever team he was on recently. So Noah Brown is not a good football
he's not
player.
Diggs. No, massive upgrade.
So if you have someone like Diggs, well, like if Stroud could make Noah Brown a top 10 wide receiver that week in fantasy and a must-start player, you then get someone like Diggs, who again has a long history up until recently of being an elite level fantasy star for me again, and then you have like the injury caveat where he could just be elevated even more because you have two people who are more injury risks like that. That's kind of why I lean him.
He has the potential. I'm not going to be upset if I wind up with Diggs if I'm like hypothetically sniped on Tank and I really want a Texans receiver. But I guess in the back of my mind, I see him as more of like the icing on the cake, not necessarily the cake itself, because they're going for the Super Bowl. They're trying to maximize CJ Stroud's rookie contract so they can afford to pay him.
Mhm.
They had a lot of cap space. And a typical second round pick is not going to offer you that immediate value and addition to your roster that someone like Diggs, the veteran receiver, can. And then obviously Dell is a decent injury risk. Nico Collins has missed games as well. He's that very legit insurance policy that at least no matter what, they have at least one stud receiver. In my mind, though, he's still entering the season as a three. He could easily finish as their as their number one. So,
Mhm.
good player to not forget about. And
He's kind of boring is the thing. Like somehow Diggs became
a
boring,
little
even though he
bit.
used to be a round one wide receiver. And so that's where I think, especially in something like a salary cap draft, like you might be able to get him at a discount because a lot of people aren't going into their drafts like, who I got to get Diggs. It's like, oh, I want Tank, I want Nico. So that's where I think he can kind of have a lot of value for you as that like
it's
player you
all
almost forgot about.
it's all the bad taste he left in people's mouth with the second
Mhm.
half of last year. That was just so bad, and like You could have gone. I think this happened to Jonathan in our subscriber league, where he started off like 6-1, and
Hmm.
then leaning on Diggs, he finished with like an 8-6 record. When it was just like Diggs just let him down so much, and if you had him in the fantasy playoffs, you lost. He was just so atrocious. So, yeah, all those
Hmm.
factors deflate his price probably a little more than it should.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
100%.
let's stick with your last receiver as we move on here. I believe it is someone you disagree wholeheartedly with me. You gave me Brandon Ayuk as your
Yes.
massive fade.
100%. So how we're record at the time we're recording this, the man is still not signed. I think it's at least still on the table. He's going to get traded. I think
It's on the table. It's on the
I
table.
think his holdout, and this is why I was never worried about the Lamb holdout. I was worried about the Chase holdout, and I was worried about the Ayuk holdout. Dallas has no option but to feed CeeDee Lamb. Like
No
there
one
is no
else.
one. Like everyone is like, oh, they're going to start him slow. Bullshit. They are going to put his ass out there, and they are still going to throw the ball to CeeDee Lamb 15 plus times a game, maybe. Like, because who else? Who are they
Maybe
going
not
to take him off the
15, but
field?
yeah.
Who are they going to take him off the field for?
No
Are
one.
they going to say,
No one.
Lamb, come out? We're going to put in Deuce Vaughn in the slot and he's going to take No. Ayuk, they could start him slow. They really can because they have such an Avengers style roster where they're like, hey, we have Debo, we have Kittle, we have some rookie wide receivers. Like, we don't need to push Ayuk for these first few games with the idea that they are thinking Super Bowl. So they're like, okay, we don't want soft tissue injuries. He's not conditioned. So we need to kind of build him back in slowly. So I do think you might get a very slow start with Ayuk, which could be quite frustrating. On top of that, he just had he had an amazing year last year, and he still had way too many games with three, four, six targets. Like that's just shockingly too many of those games for me to be like, oh, I'm going to trust you. Like I think he was so efficient last year. And a big perk of Ayuk last year, he was going for like $3, $5. Like I forget what he ended
I
up
think he was
going
going for
for.
about 8.
Single digits.
Yeah.
Single digits. He is now way more expensive. And so at that price, it's like, oh, even with the three targets, four targets, he's returning so much value because that he was being drafted so much later. This year, you have to pay so much more for him compared to where he was last year. And I don't think there's a reasonable expectation that he's going to see just this massive increase in target share because everyone else is still there. And the type of routes he runs are these kind of deeper routes for them. Like he is their deep threat. So that's kind of my worry for Ayuk. And plus, I just worry that, the Super Bowl hangover is a very real thing. We saw the Bengals a couple of years ago after they lost to the Rams. They came back, and granted, it was injuries, but they still didn't perform as well as everyone thought. Who was it before that? The Eagles actually like full on imploded this past year, and some players afterwards were like, "Yeah, that was just such a like it was such a hard thing to swallow." So it's reasonable to think that maybe the Niners aren't fully recovered from losing that overtime Super Bowl to the Chiefs. Like maybe they, as a team, just kind of have a bit of a funk going on.
I think they do step back. I have them as a wild card team this year, and I don't think they're going to be as good in general. But I think if there's injury risk, he is the last one of their weapons that I think would get hurt. Like McCaffrey, after so many touches last year, with his combined age, I believe he's 28 this season, I think would be a
Hmm.
bigger injury risk. Debo, we know, is a bigger injury risk. And then Kittle turns 31 in October. I think that's what forces them to like have to sign him. And that's why I've just been in the camp all off season. Like he's not going anywhere. They just can't afford to let him go. But while there is a point I want to make that is firmly on your side, I just want to ask you these two questions.
Yeah.
Do you know how many players in the NFL finished with more receiving yards than Ayuk last year? Just take a guess.
Uh, I'm guessing it's very few.
He was
Or
number 7 in receiving yards in the entire NFL. Now, where do you think he ranked in targets among the entire NFL? He played all
oh,
17 games.
it's low. It's like it's much lower for sure.
Number 36.
And I guess my interpretation of that data is I don't have a reasonable expectation that that target share is going to go up
You're
a
telling
lot.
me if he gets paid 30 million plus dollars, he's
They
not
have
going to
so
see
many.
more targets?
I don't think that's what was holding him back from targets last year. I really don't. I don't think that's what they were working out when they were giving out targets. I think their goal is to win football games, and they just have so many other people they could lean on in a particular game. And so, and then the other stat you gave is directly tied to efficiency. And I don't think like you could hope that a player is going to improve upon their efficiency, but they could also take a step back.
I don't think he
And then if
improves
he's
on the
not as
massive
a,
efficiency. I
yeah,
just think any decrease is going to be compensated by an uptick in targets based on a
yeah.
doubling in salary. Like, I don't think you can all of a sudden pay someone more than twice what they made last year and not use him at all more. Like, especially with the age and injury concerns I just mentioned with those other three veterans, I see no world where he sees only 105 targets for the second year in a row. That is why I think any of the efficiency come down. He averaged 18 yards per catch, 17.9 last season. That is a little unrepeatable. I'm not going to pretend like the
Mhm.
efficiency isn't coming down, but even if it drops down to like 14 and a half, I would imagine 125 targets is the minimum and another 1300 plus yards is there. They only scored 7 touchdowns as well. That could easily go up. But to your point of let's pump the brakes on him, his splits in games where Debo was hurt, which is part of my argument. Like if one of those guys goes down, you would expect better numbers for Debo. They're actually not better. They're actually worse. In when
Mhm.
Debo played 13 full games with Aiyuk averaged 14 points per game. In the 3 full games where Debo was off the field entirely, his average didn't go up. It fell to 10.4 because he didn't score a single touchdown. So while his like efficiency, yardage, and catches was actually better, his touchdowns evaporated. And yeah, that is a world where he does not pay off the ranking that I'm giving him. There you would expect his numbers to be better, but they were not.
What's his current ADP? Do you know off the
I
top of
have
your
it
head?
I have it listed. Give me 1 second. On ESPN, he is wide receiver
Mhm.
20. On Yahoo, he's wide receiver 14. On Underdog, he's wide receiver 18. And on Sleeper, he's ranked the highest as wide receiver 13. Which of those do you think is most appropriately priced, or are they all too high for you?
I think if you want to say top 20, that's fine. Like if you want to go ahead and do that, it's also going to depend upon where top 20 is going to fall for you. Like if running backs get pushed up and he's now like a round 4 or 5 pick, that's fine. Like you could do worse in that spot, but
It's
that's
usually
about where
round three
I
for all of
so
those.
that's too early for me. I would take him in 4. I'd consider him in 4.
Okay.
And so that I'm probably not going to get him in like any snake draft I ever do, just
Not with
because
me. That's for sure.
yeah. Again in round 3 there are just so many other players I'd take over him for sure. Like I'd take Jalen Waddle over him straight up, like
Let's play a
100%.
little name game real quick.
Yeah.
You mentioned Jalen Waddle over him. We
Yeah.
just talked about
Easy.
Malik Nabers. You want Malik Nabers over Ayuk?
For sure. Yeah. I'll do
Wow.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want
That's
Diggs?
pretty
Do you
easy.
want Diggs over Ayuk?
Honestly, I probably, yeah, I'd probably take Diggs over Ayuk.
At
I
least it's the
think
Texans offense. At least it's a good
yeah,
offense. But okay, how about
I don't think Malik Nabers is going to have a 3 target game all year. I don't think that's going to happen once.
okay, that's fair.
Is the difference.
I just think for Ayuk that those 3 targets could be 3 catches and 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. But
Mhm.
what about Zay Flowers?
Oh no, I'm just not in on that at
So
all.
you
Like
you prefer Ayuk?
that's yeah, for sure. Because
What?
I don't think there's any like with Zay Flowers, I don't think there's any ceiling. Like when a lot of
Okay.
what I like to do for redraft is like I need to convince myself of a certain ceiling that they could go off. And with Flowers, it's like they just went and got Derrick Henry. I don't think they're gonna pass. even more than they did last year.
Even with a slight injury concern to Mark Andrews after his car accident.
He's still going to probably be their end zone target, and that's where a lot of
Yeah, that's fair.
that comes from. Lamar loves him
Um,
there.
what about George Pickens?
I just think the Steelers look like a fucking garbage fire for
Okay,
me. Like
so
I
you still prefer Ayuk there. What about two more? I'll give you two more. Michael Pittman.
So for Michael Pittman's weird because I would take Michael Pittman over Ayuk, mostly just because I think he could be the wide receiver one in that offense. He is going to get a ton of that RPO stuff. That being said, I wouldn't take Michael Pittman in the second or third where he's going either, so I'm probably not going to get any bit of Michael Pittman.
But
But I think in a vacuum,
straight up over
I,
Ayuk, you would take
I'd,
him?
I'd I think so, mostly just because I think he has a more guaranteed path to actually having some sort of an elite. Like if Anthony Richardson turns out to actually be a good thrower of the football and the Colts do better than expected, then yeah, I could see that more.
Okay, and then last one, Rashee Rice.
Uh See, that's one I personally, but I'm a bit of a maniac. I'd probably pick Rasheed Rice.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. I know there's upside
Yeah.
there, but I
Oh yeah. No, I see for me
I couldn't do that.
the
I couldn't do
yeah,
that.
I get it.
No,
But that's just
none of
me.
the names
I
I gave you, I could take over Ayuk. That's just how much I believe in him. I'm just gonna die on this hill. Like
Mhm. I get it.
watch us
Yeah.
draft. I overspend for him on the draft, and then like just like with Cooper Cup last year, like he gets traded to the Steelers, and it's just shit value for me. I'm gonna get screwed on it,
Yeah.
but I I convinced myself it was worth doing for so long, and then I panicked for like 2 days, and then I talked myself into like, no, just double down. Lit.
No, I get it. You gotta have your person. I mean, if I was to pick one person, like for me, Trey McBride is that. Like I have even before
That's
they drafted
safer at
Marvin
least.
Harrison. But I didn't move him at all, like with the Marvin Harrison signing. I convinced myself that that actually helps Trey McBride, and that's the fun level of
Okay.
delusion you have to get to when you're like, no, this is good. This is actually helpful.
You know, maybe it leads to more touchdowns. Maybe he's not double teamed as
Yeah.
much in the red zone, but that's one reason why I don't like Neighbors. I think even when they do get in the red zone, he'll just be double teamed, maybe triple teamed, and it's like, "Oh, who the fuck else are you throwing the ball to? Give it to
Yeah.
Singletary and kick a
There we
field
go.
goal." But all right,
Coaches love him.
that's it for the receivers. We'll move on to want to do quarterbacks or running backs?
Let's do Ken Walker really quickly because I don't
Okay.
know if we disagree on that too much.
If you had to rank him, where would you put him? Like
He's
top
easily
10?
top 10.
Top 10.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's easily top 10.
He's
Yeah.
my number 14 guy, and I could see him being over Derrick Henry. I couldn't see him over Etienne, Jacobs. I have him right behind James Cook, but I could be talked out of that. The highest I would go would be like 12. But what's your
Yeah,
take on Walker?
he's pretty easy top 10 for me, and I only felt that way somewhat recently. It's mostly because every chance this new coaching staff gets to talk about him, it is just like the Kenneth Walker
Fair point.
praising hour. All they do is talk about how he's a three down back. He can catch the ball. Like they have emphasized that several times. Like he can catch the ball so much. It's his backfield. There have been so many other people. Like every time people bring up Charbonnet, they bring up Kenneth Walker. Like they just talk about him so much. And I remember way back because I drafted him and Brees their rookie years. Like people were talking about them in the same breath. That talent wise, they're both pretty similar. Yeah,
They were
Brees is more,
elite in
but they're
college,
pretty
both of
close.
them. Yeah.
So my point being, Ken Walker is still an elite talent at the running back position. And I do think this offense has a chance to be a lot better than it has been. And if they're going to throw him the ball and truly give him this three down workload that they have been saying all off season that they want to give him, I think top 10 is very easily achievable if he truly gets what the coaches are saying he's going to get. And again, trust the talent. He's in that age slot where you're like, okay, you're still in your prime. So yeah, I've become much more high on Kenneth Walker recently.
He's on the
That
rookie deal, so
if you miss out on the elite level running backs and you get some killer receivers and then get Kenneth Walker, I think you're great. Like that's Love it.
Fair point. Yeah, I have been talking myself more into him. I just prefer the Bills offense, so that's why I'm like on the Cook train a little bit more. But I don't feel like exceptional about Cook over Walker. I'm kind of just like they're clearly in the same tier, and I'm just kind of holding strong on James Cook. But I could definitely see that happening. And to your point, like not only is on the rookie deal, like he was really good as a rookie as a bell cow, and
Mhm.
everyone was just shocked 2 years ago when they drafted Charbonnet in the second round,
Mhm.
where it was like, yeah, Charbonnet deserves to go round two, but why the fuck are the Seahawks taking him? They don't need him at
Yeah.
all. And that just ruined the value. So we probably
Mhm.
have kind of like Diggs, maybe a sour taste in our mouth that deflates his value a little too much, perhaps. And the recent reports have really, really sounded good. And there's no commitment to Charbonnet because it's a completely new coaching staff. So,
Mhm.
yeah, Grubb seems to absolutely love him, the offensive coordinator there in Washington, in Seattle, and
Mhm.
I could I could see it happening. I just worry about his offensive line. Like that's the last contingent variable for me where like if it wasn't a red flag, I'd probably have him top 10 or 11 probably, but his O line is pretty shitty. But he's
Yeah.
talented enough where it doesn't matter. If Lockett doesn't stay healthy, then they're probably going to give him even more volume, and his receptions will be going up as they fade Charbonnet. So, um,
That's the key for me. Like if he gets the receiving work that they're actually saying he's going to get, then I think he's easily going to be top 10. I think they could have great scoring potential. And if he can just get like two, three targets a game, like two, three catches a game, like that just bumps up that floor so much.
it really all just hinges on how many snaps does Charbonnet play, because I know for a fact when he was a rookie and Charbonnet wasn't even in the NFL, he was giving you Jonathan Taylor upside. He was giving you 16 points a game, and that could be top five. That could literally
Mhm.
be a league winner. So I agree. I do feel comfortable if I do pivot off of running back long enough to where he's my number one guy. I don't feel worried about it. And I do think his like sixth round ADP, at least on underdog, is like very, very safe and secure. Like you're drafting
Oh
him at his
yeah.
floor at that price, and it's consistent across the board. Like underdog, he's the highest at 15 on ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. He is literally 16 across the board. So I agree that he's undervalued on all fronts. I'm just you kind of talking me into bumping him up at least above James Cook. I could see him being better than ETN than Henry, but I don't think I could put
Mhm.
him above ETN personally. So 12 would be the highest I would go. And let's play another name game here. Given we just did with Ayuk, I'm pretty sure if you have him top 10, you would take
Yeah.
Walker over Henry then.
So with Henry, I just like he's going to have to break the NFL record for touchdowns for me in order to return the value he's getting. And he could do it. I'm not saying like he could easily do it. That's a thing I could see happening. I just like every year I've been like, man, like I acknowledge some athletes are built differently. Like LeBron is built differently, Kelsey's built differently. I think Henry might be in that category as
He
well,
is, yeah.
where we're like, oh, the fall off is coming, and that he's just this absolute animal of an athlete. Like I think he's in that tier. So I'm not necessarily saying the fall off is going to come. And Lamar Jackson being who he is should open up the efficiency for Derrick Henry. This is a way better
It
offensive line.
should.
It should. I just don't know how like fast he is anymore.
No,
Like it seems like he really needs to get going, and it's this lumbering kind of get going thing.
have you
And
heard
that's what worries me.
have you heard the theory that he is always carrying an invisible piano? He's got a full piano on his back that just slows him down the entire time. But
And so if he's not going to catch a lot of passes, right, which I really don't think he's going to, you really have to rely on touchdowns, which again
yeah,
could get him there, but it's such a like touchdowns, as we know, are like an unpredictable stat. And I don't know, I feel like Ken Walker could get as like pretty close to that amount of touchdowns. And I think you just have a way better injury, like again, Henry hasn't gotten hurt a ton, but he is getting older. He has so much work that's been put on him. I would just take Ken Walker over Henry for sure.
Okay, I will say this about Henry. Like, I do think he's massively overpriced across the ADPs. Like, on Underdog, he's number 9, Sleeper number 9, ESPN number 10, and I have him at number 12, so I think he's already going too high. But if you're drafting
Yeah.
on Yahoo, this I think is one of the most overvalued guys. Derrick Henry is ranked as RB5 on Yahoo.
Yeah, that's a mistake
That's
for sure.
egregiously high. I would
Yeah,
not endorse that at all. But okay,
for sure.
so
No way.
definitely above Derrick Henry. What about Devon Achane? Kenneth
So
Walker, Devon
what
Achane.
A-Chain.
Okay. What about
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs? Walker or Josh Jacobs?
So that one's trippy because AJ Dillon today got put on season-ending IR. And that's tricky, just that there's one less mouth there, and I think Marshawn Lloyd is hurt. So theoretically, Jacobs is going to get all this work. I don't know, man. I drafted Josh Jacobs last year, and he absolutely fucked me on
But that
that.
was on the
So yeah,
Raiders. But that was on the
I'm not.
Raiders.
I don't know if I'm the one to ask about Josh Jacobs. I just am a bit like, all right,
So at
uh,
least equal footing sounds like, but
yeah.
maybe Jacobs given the recent situation. Maybe.
Given this, I think they're definitely in the same tier. I like Walker a lot more as a talent. I like he's much more exciting for me. Jacobs has a bit of a sour taste, but I with Jacobs, it's like cool. Who else is there? Like I
Okay.
he now has a much clearer path to. My worry with AJ Dillon was actually that he would be this goal line back, even though he wasn't that good at it last
Oh,
year.
I
I was
wouldn't worry about
worried
that
they
at
were
all.
going. I was worried because they historically use multiple running backs in Green Bay, so I
He's
was
just
like,
been so bad, man.
yeah, no, I
I
know.
believed in him. I've tried to make it happen. I've tried to force the issue in my lineup, and it just always lets me down. Okay, so I'm just trying to narrow down where in the top 10 are there any of these 8 players you would rank Walker above? I can't imagine
Mhm.
he'd be above McCaffrey, not above Brees, not above Bijan, not above Taylor, Gibbs, Kenneth Walker, Saquon, or Pacheco. Any of those 8 would you put
Uh,
below?
I would, I'm good with, I would take Walker over Saquon. I would take Walker, let's see, probably over Pacheco.
Wow.
Yeah, I would
Wow.
not take him. Him and ETN, I think, are probably because like I get the argument for ETN. I just don't know what the ceiling for ETN is. I feel like last year was about as good as he was going to be. Like
Okay.
he had a lot of good breaks go for him, and he still wasn't that round one caliber running back. Walker, at least it's a new offense. At least it's a new thing. So there's that hope of like, what if he gets this massive workload and there's so much to look at.
I'm just hung up
But,
on this Walker over Saquon take. Why do you hate
oh,
Saquon?
his
Holy shit.
numbers. Oh yeah, no, I'm not touching Saquon with a 10-foot pole personally. Because look, Saquon by the numbers has been declining year over year. Like he had an amazing rookie season, but like he's not as efficient. And like you could say that, oh, the Giants offensive line was bad. They was bad his rookie year too. Like he's getting older and he's not as dynamic. So as a rusher, he is not as good. Also, like we just had DeAndre Swift go to Philadelphia. DeAndre Swift was like a massive target earning running back. Not as good as Saquon, but he still was like known for earning targets. And his targets participation in Philadelphia went way down, like way below what it was previously. My
True.
point being, I don't think that the Eagles are going to change their complete offensive identity to throw the ball to Saquon more. Like he's still going to get some targets, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what it was in Philadelphia. Sorry, in New York. I also think that the brotherly shove that they do is not going away. I don't think that all of that hinged on Jason Kelsey. I think that's a team identity thing, such that if they are inside the five, I still think they're giving it to Hurts. I think it's a team identity thing. They like to do it. It means something to them because, like, they tried to outlaw it last year. Like, they tried to ban it last year. And I think that was like a point of pride for the Eagles to be like, we're inside the three, we're brotherly shoving in there. So I don't know if he's going to get all these goal line looks. So he's declining by his numbers. He's not going to catch as many passes. I don't know if the touchdowns are as guaranteed. I'm also just worried about the Eagles in general. I think I am in the camp of I don't think the way the team fell apart at the end of last year is now just fixed. I don't think it's just no big deal and we're fine now sort of a thing. Especially with the reports that like Sirianni and Hurts couldn't be in a room together. Their relationship's a work in progress. What the fuck? Like if you're having those articles be written now, like weeks before the season starts, that the head coach and the quarterback can't like talk together, I'm like, this seems weird and this seems bad. Like I don't know what's up. I can see the Eagles just like kind of imploding.
I'm convinced Sirianni gets fired. I also think they
Yes.
might lose to the Saints as like just this massive trap game that they completely overlook and like have so much hubris that it's like they're just not prepared
Hmm.
for it and it just like shows
Yeah.
the cracks. And then I also predict like a 4 game losing streak midseason that leads to Sirianni getting fired. But
And the
uh
defense I think is still shit. If the defense is shit, you're not going to run the ball as much. Like I think a
whoops.
lot like there just isn't going to be as much like I don't know. I just think like Saquon sometimes goes in the first round, beginning of the second. I'm good. I will take a receiver there. I will do
All
anything
right.
else. So give me Ken Walker.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna, for the record, say I still am taking Saquon well above Kenneth Walker. I'm not
You
willing
want
to
to
do
do we
that.
we did bets last year. I want to do a bet. I will bet you that Ken Walker end of year is better than Saquon.
How much you want to bet?
I don't know, like $20.
Deal.
Yeah, let's
Deal.
do that.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I will take
Okay.
Ken Walker over Saquon.
I, I assume if Saquon gets like injured week 4, the bet
I
doesn't
mean,
count.
yeah,
But
for
okay,
sure.
yeah.
I guess that kind of goes for both. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
yeah,
Assuming
health
they
that
play the same amount of games or
are
with,
relatively close. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. Okay. I will happily
Yeah.
take the Saquon side of that bet.
Mhm.
All right. Very, very interesting. You also brought up Achane and Mostert on this list of players. What's going on there?
I think both are mispriced at where they are
Are they
right
too
now.
expensive or are they too low?
So they're both just not correct. Let's talk about A-Chain for a second. I have concerns about A-Chain for sure. He had the most, not just an efficient running back season. He had, by the numbers, the most efficient running back season of all time,
I believe it was
which
8 yards per carry.
that is not
No.
repeatable. Like clearly it's not. That has never in like the 50 years or the past 50 years, no one has ever had a historic outlier efficiency season and then topped it. They always regress more towards the mean. Sometimes it's by half a yard, sometimes it's by a yard, sometimes it's by multiple yards. So he's going to come down. You then hope he's going to get more work. Um, the problem is Raheem Mostert is still there, and they have said that he is their guy. Like Mike McDaniel has said that, like, and I think Mostert could get green zone looks, red zone looks still. But again, with Achane, he was so goddamn explosive. He looked like Tyreek Hill out there. He looked so good, and he was so good for them that I can't imagine this offseason. They're like, how do we keep him off the field? So what I think they are going to do, like at the moment, you have Tyreek Hill as their number one wide receiver weapon, Waddle is their next. I think there's a scenario where A-Chain becomes their third receiving option
He has been running
because
a lot out of the slot
if
this
he
training
becomes
camp.
their third receiving option, and what he fun
He
stats
should.
from last year, he had very high targets per route run last year. He just didn't run a lot of routes. So they drew up designed pass plays for Achane last year. And the way that works is Tyreek Hill is taking the elite corner, like the elite secondary attention. Waddle gets the next bit. So that most of the time puts Achane up against a linebacker who he is going to beat every fucking day of the week. And
He's
you
so
could easily
fast.
get him a quick catch and run, and he's just gone. So that's why I think, and then if Mostert gets hurt or someone like who, if Mostert gets hurt,
At the age of 32,
like the upside for A Chain is a top five running back. is my point. Like, I
Yeah,
think the upside for him is a top five running back, and in that first round next to Bijan and Brees. That's why I think he's potentially mispriced because he's going in like the third, fourth round of ESPN.
on
So
ESPN he's
that's
so cheap. It makes no sense. He's RB
so that's
17 on ESPN.
yeah.
It's like
But even in
egregiously low.
underdog, right? Like if
On Underdog
he
he's RB
hits
7.
this if he hits the ceiling, like I know he goes in like the second usually,
Yeah,
like
late second.
I even think that might be mispriced. If he truly hits the ceiling he's capable of, that might be mispriced. But let's assume for a second, no, that's and it's the counter Achane argument. Then inherently that means Mostert is going to be a bigger deal than he's currently priced
Yeah,
at.
that's exactly what we saw
So
last season.
so if Mostert is actually a bigger deal, then where he's going right now is an absolute steal because it means he's going to be healthy for the whole. Like it feels as if Achane is priced such that Mostert is going to be a factor, but Mostert is priced such that he's going to miss a lot of time, or he's not going to be, or that Achane's going to take over. Like they are priced weirdly. It's not correlated to each other, and that's
So
what I don't understand.
so on
Like if
Underdog,
we believed Achane was going to take over, he would be much, much higher. If we believed Mostert was still going to be a factor, he should be much, much higher. He was the NFL leader in touchdowns last year. So
so on Underdog, A-Chain is RB7, Mostert RB23. You're saying if assuming everyone stays healthy, not a single game is missed between the two of them, you're saying A-Chain should be like 5 and Mostert should be like lower?
higher.
Higher. So they should
Yeah.
both just be higher.
Yeah, essentially.
And if one of them gets hurt,
The other
obviously the other's
is,
top 5.
yeah.
So
I think Achan
you're
is
high on both of
priced
them.
such.
You're
I'm high on both. I'm
okay.
high on both of them. Their prices just don't make a lot of sense to me because they both seem to be hedging that the other one will matter more. And it's like, well, one of those statements is gonna kind of be wrong. So you should draft both. Like I think you should take both of them and then just kind of see how it works out. But I think that like the absolute sky's the limit for A-Chain, especially if he becomes the third weapon in this passing attack, which I do think they're going to have to pass more. Their defense took massive hits this offseason. They had a really weirdly low pass rate in the second half of the season last year. I think that's going to be much more towards the mean, and they are going to have to throw the ball a lot more. So that's why I'm high on Achan. And if Mostert has his role from last year and stays healthy, then he's mispriced.
I just think the reason why they're not priced higher is because of their mutual injury concerns. Like that is the risk that is baked in. It's not that like they're not factoring in the upside. Like RB23 for a 32-year-old is still pretty decent, especially given the assumption that A-Chain's going to take that massive step. And then with so much missed time last year and his kind of like brittle frame, I mean, I don't want to discount him as like he's automatically getting hurt, but I think that's the only reason why he's at RB7. It's an assumption that he goes down and that you can't take someone with that much injury risk at the end of the first or like mid first, and that's why he gets it around discount. That's the reason why. But to your point, if you're drafting on ESPN, like these are probably the two biggest steals at the running back position. A-Chain is RB17 and Mostert is RB32. So yeah, you can 100% draft both, feel exceptional about it, and you probably can start both of them and get really good value out of that combo. Obviously, if one
Mm-hmm.
goes down, Jalen Wright becomes valuable,
Oh
but the
yeah.
other one is a true league winner. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I
100%.
I would draft both of them, especially on ESPN. That's a steal. There's no risk at all at those prices.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's pivot to quarterback, where you mentioned three names. We'll start with the
Mm-hmm.
ones you're high on, and we'll go with CJ Stroud.
So Stroud, it's pretty easy. I mean, we've only seen one season of him, and there are some people saying we gotta see it again. I'm ready to kind of say I think at the end of the season he could be the number one quarterback in Dynasty. I think I've seen enough what from what like he looks so good. This offense is going to pass a ton more. They had like a lower pass rate over expected last year. I think that's going to be in a category of we are going to pass the ball a lot more. And something I've been thinking a lot more about this offseason is just like what is an NFL team's identity going to be in a certain year? A good example of this is you look at the Cowboys last year, where it's the first year Kellen Moore is gone. McCarthy is taking over play calling. So what does he want to do? Immediately prove that he is better than Kellen Moore. And so he is going to throw the ball a ton. He's going to run up in the regular season, and their goal is to score a lot of points. Like in hindsight, that's what I think happened with the Cowboys. So projecting that forward to this season, I could see the Texans doing a very similar thing, saying, you know what? We've been getting a lot of offseason hype. We're going to throw the fucking ball so much this year. We're going to put the ball in our MVP caliber quarterback's hands and show everybody what we can do. We have these three elite weapons. That's going to be our identity. Like in the preseason game, the thing that was so awesome to see, they were like up against their own goal line and they went in a five wideout set. That is really a lot of trust to put into Stroud to not get a safety and not step out of the back of the end zone and make the throw. And he did. He threw like a 10-yard pass to Dalton Schultz, went through multiple reads. He looks good. Like he looks the part of a top three quarterback in the NFL. And so I think he could easily go for over 5,000 yards this year. That wouldn't shock me at all. I think he could just break records this year, mostly because I think the team will want to run up the numbers. I think the team is going to want to do it. But that's the problem that the Chiefs kind of have, in my opinion, is they're looking at it more like we want to win the Super Bowl. We don't care about Patrick's numbers as much. Our goal is to win the Super Bowl. We win that by being like scoring three touchdowns and then kind of locking it in. I think the Texans are going to want to be like, hey, look at us go. We're running up the score. We are bombing it downfield. Look at our quarterback. So I think he can have an insane amount of touchdowns this year. I think over 5,000 yards is certainly in the cards.
So he is almost a consensus QB6. On ESPN, he's number
Mhm.
6. Underdog, he's number 6. Sleeper, he's number 5. But Yahoo, he's number 7. So average is QB6. Are you willing to put him into the top 3?
I still think Allen is number one for me, mostly because like even with the offensive coordinator change, he actually ran more. Like
Yeah.
he had several. So like the rushing touchdowns are so valuable for quarterbacks, and
That's
that's
the
my.
only red flag with Stroud. He doesn't really run the ball
But
comparable to the other
I
top
think he could
4 or
have the
5.
passing volume.
Yeah.
Real quick, that's why I don't like James Cook because I think Allen is going to be their goal line back.
Okay.
So you're instantly in this weird position with Cook where you're like, all right, what? Like you can go down the field and you're like, oh boy, here comes a James Cook touchdown, and it's no, it's Josh Allen. Or
Or
even
randomly
if
Ray
Ray
Davis.
Davis,
Yeah.
if Ray Davis becomes more reliable in that regard, then you're just kind of in this weird spot of like, okay, now what? Like, what am I looking for
Yeah.
every week? So Allen still has to be one for me just because of the rushing, and I think he'll figure out a way to make the receivers work. Um, Two gets tricky. I'd probably put Mahomes at two.
Okay.
I really would. I think this is his best crew of weapons that he's had. I know he had a rough statistics year last year, but I'd probably put Mahomes there. I think Lamar could easily like if he continues to have good passing numbers and the touchdowns really get there, I think he could be there. So I can't put the best I could do for Stroud is probably five,
So also behind Hurts.
probably behind Hurts. That's the one though where I'd potentially flip Hurts.
Okay.
Just because I am worried about the Eagles as a team this year. I could see like halfway through the season, everyone being like, "Hey, this is actually a bad team, and they're actually not as good as we thought they were." And that Super Bowl run year was just a magical year. And
They can probably
I could, yeah,
still win the division with 10 wins, probably. I think if the Cowboys do drop off like I'm expecting, I think they could sneak in
yeah.
with just 10 wins and win the division. Maybe even 9, honestly. But I recently updated my win totals for every team, and I now have the Texans at 13 wins, the 1 seed in the AFC. And if that happens, I think you can't really make a case that he's not the MVP
Mhm.
if they are the 1 seed. And in terms of betting odds, according to FanDuel, he is tied for third with Joe Burrow at plus 1,000 in the MVP. And I think
Mhm.
the only like slightly better value, but is a much riskier dark horse bet, would maybe be Jordan Love at plus 1400, just because if they also get the one seed, like if they overtake the Lions in their division, I think they'll probably be the best team in the NFC, and that would
Mhm.
also be a compelling argument to put Love as a MVP frontrunner. Also, like with the MVP winners, like it was the second for Lamar last year. I don't think he'll win
Mhm.
two in a row. Mahomes has won multiple. We're kind of getting tired of that. Maybe it's the year where Allen finally lives up to the MVP hype, but with all the new weapons, it's kind of hard to see that happening. Burrow could get
Mhm.
hurt again, and then you are down on Jalen Hurts and the Eagles in general. So I feel like for your money, those would be the two best return on investments, but obviously Stroud appropriately ranked higher, I think is the
Mhm.
best bet for your money at MVP.
100%.
So I like that call. I think that's a very good call. And
Mhm.
if I remember correctly off the top of my head, I might have the exact number wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is what it is. If you take out the Jets game last year for Stroud, where all of his receivers were hurt. Tank Dell and Schultz were out to start the game, and Nico got hurt after 3 snaps. It was raining, and he also got a concussion at the
Mhm.
like top of the fourth quarter. If you take that game out where they were absolute dog shit, he was quarterback 4 in fantasy points per game, tied with Dak Prescott at 19.8. We assume he'll be better, so
Mhm.
he could be quarterback 4, quarterback 3, maybe even quarterback 2 if he does put
Oh
up
yeah.
5,000 plus passing yards and 40 plus touchdowns. That's what he
Yeah.
has to do it. Like you're not going to get 600 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. That's just not his game. He's maybe like in the Joe Burrow tier of like you might get 200 yards just because he lucks into it, but
Mhm.
it's very it's a lot more likely you're somewhere between 100 and 150, less than 10 rushing yards per game, and maybe he sneaks in for like
Mhm.
3 rushing touchdowns. I think
Sure.
that's what he did last year. So
Yeah.
for fantasy, yeah, I think the highest I could go would be 4, but lowest I can go where I do have him is 6, and I think he's a good value um,
Mhm.
where
Oh,
he's
for
going.
sure.
Um, Next guy you brought up was Jayden Daniels.
So we're going to tie this into another pick of yours in Anthony Richardson and why I
Okay,
disagree on
yeah.
Anthony Richardson because I feel like you can't talk about one without the other. So last year, I drafted Anthony Richardson as my only quarterback in one of our
Ah,
leagues.
now I
Um,
understand.
no, no, no. Here's what it really is. I took him there because I was like, okay, he's going as the quarterback 13. And at
Yeah,
quarterback 13, this profile screams value because he has top five upside and you get him for peanuts. That he then plays several games, proves that that upside was there. So I was right with the upside, but he gets hurt. Injuries happen, like it's really hard to calculate. I was still happy that I took the risk on him. Fast forward to this year, he's now way more expensive
QB5.
and he's now QB5. Let's put a pin in that for a second and pivot over to Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels he is the same profile of a quarterback as Anthony Richardson, except he's even better than him. He is better than him because he is a better passer. He is a way more
I'll
proven
give
thrower
you
of the
that.
football.
I will give you that.
He scrambles and he's just as likely to scramble and run as Anthony Richardson. I add to that, Jayden Daniels is 24, Anthony Richardson's 23. Jayden Daniels has more high level football experience than Anthony Richardson. Because I wouldn't count any of Anthony Richardson's NFL games. He was out for most of them. So it's hard to be like, oh, but he has NFL experience. Does he? He had like a few games. But Jayden Daniels has been playing at LSU, an SEC school, which is the closest thing to professional football as you can get and absolutely balling out. So he has way more high level football experience, way more defensive reading experience than Anthony Richardson. And again, I think he could beat him in terms of passing numbers. And even though you could have a rushing quarterback, they still have to have the passing. Like they can't have no passing yards in order to make it into the top 10. That's why you have quarterbacks like Dak or Joe Burrow who make it into the top 10 with not a ton of rushing. Like the passing numbers still have to be there. And for Daniels, I think they really will be coupled with the rushing. And so if you like Anthony Richardson, I like you can go get his identical twin, in my opinion, in Jayden Daniels rounds and rounds later. And then the big difference that people say is, oh, but Shane Steichen. Oh, but the Colts. I like Shane Steichen way more than Cliff Kingsbury. Do you like him? What is it? 4 rounds better in ESPN? I don't think that is worth 4 rounds. And on top of that, I just like if Anthony Richardson and Jayden Daniels were in the same draft class, Jayden Daniels would 100% go ahead of Anthony Richardson. Like he is a better prospect than Anthony Richardson was.
Probably. Yeah.
So,
He has way more starts in college, way more proven in terms of his college career. But
mm,
I think there's also a reason why Jayden Daniels played 5 years in college. Anthony Richardson only played 3. And part of that is they're the same size. They're both 6'4". I just looked this up. Anthony Richardson, based on the combine, came in with 4.43 speed. Jayden Daniels 4.5. And Anthony Richardson reportedly weighs even more now, but at the combine was listed at 244 pounds, 10-inch hands, whereas Jayden Daniels came in 210 pounds. The hands were not measured, but 4.5 speed. So you have probably a 40-pound difference in weight at the same height. And this probably gets negated by the fact that Richardson got hurt last season. But if one of them is going to get hit by a tackle, like in the middle of the field on like a 30-yard run at like full speed that knocks them out of the season, it's probably Jayden Daniels. Granted, that's what happened to Richardson on a shoulder injury that kept him out
and
of like
and a
13 games. So
concussion and a concussion. He had like 3 different injuries or something. Like they both need to learn to slide is the big lesson
yeah,
here. They both need to learn, hey, just you got your 10 yards, slide, call it. They just so that they could stay in and play more.
I will say the price on Jayden Daniels probably makes him a safer investment, but
Mhm.
I think he would max out around QB4, whereas I genuinely think Richardson can max out as QB1 by like a solid 1.5 difference per game than anyone else. Like I really think we could see like 25 points per game from Richardson, and like the next best guy is like 23, and Jayden Daniels like could give you 22 and you're still like ecstatic about it. The only reason I'm like willing to put my chips more in the Richardson side is I think the ceiling is higher. I do prefer Shane Steichen over Cliff Kingsbury. We've at least like never seen Kingsbury in Washington. We at least did see Steichen in Indianapolis last year, where they were like 3 plays away from a playoff berth with Gardner Minshew. So as long as he
Mhm.
stays healthy, I think they're going to be a really good team. But at least from a price standpoint, if I miss out on Richardson and I have to settle for Jayden Daniels, I'm not upset
Mhm.
about it. I think he's a really good value, really high upside. I just think the ceiling is higher for Richardson. That's why I prefer him. But from a passing standpoint, I do think
Mhm.
Jayden Daniels is more polished.
And
Um,
again, even with Russian quarterbacks, like if you think about Lamar, Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, like passing numbers still are there. It's not all rushing. So Richardson really needs to improve as a passer and actually have good passing numbers this year. And I think he can do it. It's just it's not something. It was a question mark of his coming out of college, and then he really didn't do himself any favors by injuring his shoulder, which
no,
could impact his passing abilities. So,
he looked
we'll
bad in the
see.
preseason, but
Yeah,
I mean, 2 years ago, Kenny Pickett looked amazing in the preseason, and that was completely worthless. So I don't want to overreact to preseason
oh sure.
tape, but yeah, like Jayden Daniels, I have him as the QB 11. I could definitely be like 5 spots too low on that for sure. I just think there's injury risk and we haven't seen it, so
Mm,
that's why. And his price on ESPN is QB 12. On Yahoo, it's 11. Underdog 10. It has been rising lately. And then on Sleeper, it's the cheapest at QB 14. I think that's a
mhm.
fucking steal.
Yeah,
That
he's
is
8 for me.
guaranteed to work out. I could see him as high as 6. No, 7. I wouldn't be willing to put him above Stroud. I think 7 would be
No,
the highest I could go, but I could bump him into the next tier where he's on par with Kyler Murray and can finish top 5. It's in the range of outcomes, and for the price, it's
yeah,
probably safer. But I just can't quit Richardson. I just wanna.
he's exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
just more hyped on it, and I think they'll win more games. But I do think he has better, like a full bevy of weapons that is better than Jane Daniels. Like Pittman and McLaurin. I think Pittman, you could argue, is better. At worst, they're on equal footing. I think AD Mitchell,
Mhm.
Josh Downs are better than anybody else that the Commanders have. Granted, the Colts also have a better running back that could fuck things up, but that also means the offense is going to be better as well. And that's
Mhm.
why I think there's more touchdowns in Indianapolis. There's a few more field goals with Washington. That's my like big
Mhm.
tiebreaker, along with the 40 extra pounds that I think
Mhm.
is why I put him 2 tiers above. But I
Mhm.
understand the argument 100%. I could be too high on Richardson. I could be too low on Jaden Daniels. But if I had to pick
Mhm.
one, gun to my head, I'm going Richardson.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. I definitely get it. I mean, hey, he's exciting. Like straight up, if someone was like, "Who do you want, regardless of price?" I would pick Richardson over Daniels. I just fact it for me. It's more a factoring in price sort of a question. Where I'm like, if you like that profile, this in my opinion, 99% of the same profile, and you just get him for way cheaper.
he's got the price advantage by far. But last player we'll mention on
Mhm.
your list is a tight end that is
Mhm.
extremely polarizing, and it sounds like you are willing to get hurt again.
Oh yeah, I haven't
Kyle
been hurt.
Pitts.
So I actually have yet to take Kyle Pitts. I've
Oh, okay.
instead just laughed and mocked people as they did it. But Kyle Pitts, though, like you don't talk about him enough on this channel, and we need to fix that right here, right now.
Okay.
So let's back up a little bit here. Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta.
Right.
And we, as a fantasy community, instantly say, Drake London, you are going to go from literally not startable in fantasy to a round 2 pick, to a round
Overpriced,
one,
but
two turn pick.
that's what happened.
But we as a fantasy community have said that. Like
Yeah.
not startable to that. Kyle Pitts, meanwhile, did not go up at all. He has stayed down there just because of how much he has hurt people in the past. So we believe that Kirk Cousins can elevate the Atlanta passing offense so much to make someone go from not startable to a round 2 pick, but we don't apply that same logic to Kyle Pitts just because of our own bias towards this player. Meanwhile, this dude, like a lot of what happened with Kyle Pitts makes a lot of sense to me. Like he had, by all accounts, a great rookie season. We just valued him too high. We
Minus the
just said, oh,
touchdowns, but
he's
yes.
but went over 1,000 yards. Like
Yeah.
we saw the proof of concept, but it was just like a bad offense.
Mm-hmm.
Seemingly now fixed by getting Kirk Cousins a new coach. Like we think the offense will be better in Atlanta. They're projected to be an average scoring offense, easy schedule, yada yada yada. So you might still have touchdown concerns, but they should come more plenty. You then have the next season where he was hurt. Like he had an
Yeah.
injury that we didn't know about. He had a really bad knee injury, and then most of the year looked hurt. Like I remember seeing clips of him and he looked like he wasn't running at 100%. So for me, that's kind of an excusable year because the dude had a fucked up knee, but we haven't factored that in. It's just no, he's washed. He's bad. I don't want to hear it anymore. He's bad. He's garbage. So he's now in a position where he could easily be the number 2 target on this offense. I mean, yeah, they have Darnell Mooney. I think Pitts could be a better talent than Mooney. Rondale Moore is out for the year. So there are less targets there. And the truth, like with Kyle Pitts, that people aren't really weighing, in my opinion, is what if he's better than Drake London? Like, what if he is? Like, everyone has said, oh, London's a round two pick now. We don't have any proof that Kyle Pitts is worse than Drake London. He might even be better.
He was
There
drafted
wasn't
higher.
he was drafted higher. There are even talks of Pitts running like more intermediate routes and having a better ADOT. The specific comment that the new Rams coaching staff made was they want to have Pitts run a lot of the Puka Nakua routes from last season, which is this kind of over the middle crossing routes that put him against linebackers and safeties, and he could beat those people. So and we know Kirk Cousins doesn't mind throwing to the tight end. He just fed TJ Hawkinson when Hawkinson was healthy. So that concept is at least still there. And if Drake London behaves as the X wide receiver on the outside, they're not going to compete for the same targets and might even draw attention. So my entire Kyle Pitts pitch is he's as cheap as he's ever been. He should have gotten more expensive because everything that applied to Drake London with the Rams coaching staff, who likes to consolidate the targets. They like to consolidate who gets the ball. If he's their clear second best receiving weapon, he could just and he could even be the first. Like he could just beat out Drake London, and he's not priced for it. He didn't react to it because there's a stigma around him. So the Atlanta passing game could be a lot better. He didn't get more expensive. And again, he's a tight end. So he could easily smash. Like I think in ESPN, he goes in the sixth, seventh round. I think that's a smash for what he can return on value. Yeah, that's the Kyle Pitts speech.
So on ESPN, he is, whoa, let me pull this up. On ESPN, he is tight end 8, Yahoo tight end 7, Underdog he's tight end 6. That's the highest he's going. And on Sleeper he's number 7. He's my tight end 9. So where would you put him? Like top 5?
Top 7.
Top 7.
But
Okay.
I would put him more specifically at 5 or 6. But he's guaranteed top 7, in my opinion.
Guaranteed top 7. So
Guaranteed. So I think the top 7 tight ends, and my entire philosophy of fantasy this season, you have to go to top 7 tight end because I
okay.
think the top 7 tight ends will be leaps and bounds better than the rest of them, and that's going to be your advantage each and every week. Laporta, Kelsey, McBride, Andrews, Kincaid, Kittle, Pitts are the top 7. I would take him over Kittle. I would probably take him over Kincaid. So I would take him after. I wouldn't take him before Mark Andrews. I wouldn't take him before McBride.
Okay.
So for me, I'd put him at 5th. You can make the argument for Kincaid. The problem is with Kincaid, we really haven't had a good an off season where they're like, oh, he's ready to go. Instead, it's like Dawson Knox is still there, and like there hasn't been.
I don't
It's the
worry
op.
about it.
It's the opposite of the Ken Walker shit, where it's like with Ken Walker, all they're doing is talking this man up. And with T. Higgins, all they're doing is talking this man up. He's another person that I like. But with Kincaid, it's the opposite, where they're not shit talking him. They're just like, oh, it's not gonna like they're gonna spread the ball around, and this person matters, and Knox matters. So I'm like, I don't know, like it should work.
All
It
right.
should make sense. But that's why I'm like, I could see it flip flopping.
I have just fallen in love with Ferguson for a 2-round discount compared to Pitts, and with the variables of him crashing and burning 3 years in a row. I mean, I guess he didn't crash and burn year 1. Like I actually
He
picked it
did off
in.
of expectation.
It was strictly because of touchdowns, where in his rookie season, somebody got so fed up with him that they actually dropped him in our high school league. And I ended up picking him up like the week before that London game where he went off and scored his 1 touchdown. And he was actually my starting tight end to close out that season. And I finished second in that league. But
If Brock Bowers this year had Kyle Pitts rookie season, we would all do a backflip because of where he's going. And like if he did that, we would all say we were right about Brock Bowers. But he is going way later than we were drafting Kyle Pitts his rookie year. And that was the problem that year, is that he was going way too high based upon
he's
expectation.
he's always been so hyped up, so
But
steamed up,
if Brock
and it's just
Bowers at
never.
whatever tight end number he is now, double digits or whatever, it's like if he did that, we'd be like, we were right. He is this elite prospect and blah blah blah. But
There's a world where he does it and does finish top 5. I have him in the wild card range where it's like you can really get a massive range of outcomes where I could be 6 spots too low here at 9. I could be 7 spots too high. Last year, he wasn't even a top 16 tight end. Granted, that was with Arthur Smith and Jonnu Smith. And
Mhm.
Jonnu, for some reason, got 60 or 70 targets. Pitts got 90.
Mhm.
So he'll be better. I do think he's top 10. I just think for the price, I'm willing to pass and take Kittle, who goes later. I'm willing to take Ingram, who goes a round and a half later, but I am so confident with Ferguson and his like secure safety net floor. It's really just a matter of price why I don't
Mhm.
don't want Pitts. Um,
I get that.
and there's also so many like good players going in the 6th round, at least on underdog, that you can take. Like if you're taking Pitts in the 6th round, that means you're passing on Kenneth Walker. You're passing on George Kittle. You're passing
Mhm.
on like the last tier of receiver that actually makes a
Mhm.
difference for your team. So if he was going around later, I think I would have taken him more than 10% of the time. I think I would have drafted him a lot, but because of the price and who I have to pass on in order to get him, Richardson, I also have to pass on a lot of the time to take Kyle Pitts.
Mhm.
And if I'm going to be opting for an elite one off position, whether it's quarterback or tight end, I'd rather go with Richardson than Pitts,
Mhm.
knowing I can get good values 2 rounds later with Ferguson. So that's
Mhm.
my biggest gripe, his price. But we'll see how it works out, man. He definitely has the talent, and there's been people who have been on the train in the past. They've just been so burned that
Mhm.
you don't hear them talk about him anymore, and
100%. And
it
that's
it
kind
could
of,
burn
and
you.
that's why I think in formats like auction drafts, you could probably get him for like $3 because people instantly, when they see
Maybe
his name come up, you're just like, fuck that. Like you're
there's
gonna have half
at least half the
ha-
league is not bidding on
half the
him at all.
league, half the league instantly just like looks at their phone and starts scrolling, like is just fucking, they're like, all right,
Yeah, they're
well, look
queuing
where
up
this is
other
going.
people. He's on a lot of do
Yeah,
not draft lists just from previous experiences. So
100%.
that's a fair point.
Yeah,
I think there's been a lot of good points made by you on this podcast.
100%.
Some I vehemently disagree with. Like I can't wait for the $20 in my pocket when Saquon outperforms Walker.
Yeah.
That's gonna be nice. But there's been a lot of good takes. You've shifted my mind. I think if I was gonna adjust, I'd probably bump up Kenneth Walker in my ranks. Maybe I'd also probably bump up Jayden Daniels if I was gonna readjust on that take.
Mhm.
I'm not moving off Aiyuk. I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, I get it.
I have to
Yeah.
stick to my guns. Um,
Figure out a way to make Jayden Daniels top 10 and Ken Walker top 10 because
I
in my
can't go
opinion,
top
they
10
just
on
have to be.
Walker. I the highest I think I could go is number 12, but
Mhm.
I think you've convinced me I'd rather have Walker over James Cook as of
Mhm.
this recording. Over Derrick Henry, it's going to come down to touchdowns. That's
Mhm.
the only gripe I have, where
Mhm.
the Ravens will be scoring more touchdowns than the Seahawks. But yeah, good stuff, man. Really appreciate it.
Mhm. Yeah, anytime. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
We should also do a post draft one of these,
Okay.
and then we can share our
Yeah,
actual thoughts.
I'm down for sure. So we'll be drafting
Shoot.
Thursday night on the live stream. Be sure to check that out if you're looking forward to it as much as I am. Probably not as much as I am, but
Are
that's
you
a
gonna
high
put it on
bar.
a del Are you gonna put it on a delay this year,
Oh
like by
yeah,
a few seconds?
I'm at least a 10-second delay, a
Because
minimum
every
of 10
time we were in a
seconds.
bidding war, I would have you like right here, and I was like, I gotta read his facial cues. We gotta, I gotta see how nervous he is to go one more.
Am I bluffing? Am I willing to
Yeah.
risk the price enforcement? And yeah, it didn't work out for me last year with Drake London. Price enforcing it $7. I thought he would be bid on again. It did not happen, and I was fucking
Yeah,
pissed.
bit of a tangent. That's why I just don't price enforce. I'm much more willing to let someone get a value on a player than risk fucking up my entire draft just to try and like get someone because it's like the benefit is, oh, they spent $3 more on someone I don't even care about. And meanwhile, I'm stuck with like my fourth running back
I
without a receiver yet.
it was still early in the draft. I thought it was worth it. His like pre-draft value was like 15. And I was like, oh, he's at least going for 10. Let's speed this shit up. And it was like, wait a minute. Why are
Yeah, why
maybe,
did they stop?
maybe I said something on the stream and they're like, okay, fine, then you fucking have him. I'm not gonna do that next time.
It gets to that 3 second beep, 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 and you're just like,
You're panicked when you hear
you're
that
panicked.
second beep and you don't want him. You are
Oh,
shitting your pants.
God.
But
Oh,
we'll see
man.
how the chips fall. Yeah, we'll recap that on maybe Friday or Saturday.
I'm excited.
Sounds good, man. You take
Yeah,
care.
sounds good, buddy. Yeah, see you. Bye.